thank you for joining us for the next session. I hope you enjoyed the first one. My name is Stacey. I am a marketing executive here at Trinity College London for our language qualifications. So I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker, which is Fazri Ramadhan. Hello, Fazri. Can you hear us?
Okay, thank you, Stacey.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great, thank you. So Fazri is an ESL teacher from Indonesia and has 5 years of experience teaching from kids all the way up to adults. Fazri holds several certifications in teaching and language acquisition, and he also has a degree in politics and international relations, but teaching and language is his passion. So I will leave you with Fazri now to go through his presentation. Thank you for your engagement so far and during the chat. I can see there's lots of you here from all over the place. We have China, Philippines, India, Dubai. It's fantastic. So thank you to everybody. Thank you for joining us. There's also a Q&A box next to the chat. If you can put any questions you have for Fazri in there, and then at the end of the session, we'll go through those and get through as many as we can. So thank you, enjoy the session, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, Fazri, if you'd like to begin.
Okay. Okay. So thank you everyone for coming to my session, and thank you wherever you are and wherever you are. Okay. So today we're going to talk about the interplay of instinct and grammar in English language learning, study of non-native young learners. So basically, what we are going to talk today is about how could a non-native speaker, a young learner, is able to spot a grammatical mistake without prior knowledge or without formal class previously. Okay, so we're going to the second slide. Okay, wait. Okay, so this presentation will explore the relationship between instinctual language acquisition and formal grammar proficiency in young and native English learner. As I said earlier, so it will be about how a non-native speaker, a young learner, is able to spot a grammatical mistake without prior knowledge or without formal class. First, we're going to talk about learning language. So how could or how does a baby learn a language? So as you can see over here, babies are born with innate ability to learn language. So basically they absorb language around him or her, and then they are going to copy it, and they learn the structure and so on. So basically a baby, they learn language by exposure. The exposure they heard or they listen from their caregivers, from their parents, for people around them. So basically they absorb the language, and then they copy, and then they learn. Okay, we're going to the next one. So a baby learn new language by copying, by absorbing, and then we're going to the next one, a language instinct. So it is a concept talking about how could someone learn language. So there are two concepts that we are going to talk. The first would be the language instinct by Steven Pinker and universal grammar by Chomsky. We're going to take a quick look on those two concepts. First, Pinker argued that humans are born with innate capacity for language. Chomsky suggested that children are born with an innate understanding of grammar. So basically, both of them are agree. So both of them are actually agree with each other. But Pinker expands the theory of Chomsky a bit more, actually. So the difference will be like Pinker agreed with Chomsky, but Chomsky had an idea that language is innate. So it's an ability that a person already has when they're born. But Pinker argued that it's not really innate ability, but it's a shape of evolution, usually. So that's the difference. So Chomsky says that it's already innate, but Pinker says yeah, it's evolutionary evidence. So we're moving on. Next one again. And then, so language instinct and grammar mistake. Someone with language instinct is able to spot grammar mistake in his or her native language. So it is easy for a native speaker to spot a mistake in his or her language because they are already learned about it since they were born, since they were first talk and first listen. So it is easy for them. But how about non-native speaker? While it is easy for native speakers to spot mistake in their native language, there's a question, of course. Do non-native speakers possess the same ability despite growing up with a different language? So it is very easy for for a native speaker to spot mistake because they, what is it? They have used the language since they were born, and then there are two theories, there are two concepts that we're talking previously, the Chomsky and the other one. So it is easy for native speaker, but how about non-native speaker? Okay. Some student, despite learning English as a second language for only a year or two, can spot grammar mistake in a text or passage solely relying on their instinct without prior knowledge. Okay, I would like to give more specification for this slide. Okay, young learner in this presentation, it would be around age 8 years old to 10 years old. So that's the, what is it? That's the age bracket that we are going to talk, and that's the age bracket for this presentation. Okay, there are two questions that this presentation are trying to answer. The first one would be, how do young native speakers learn a foreign language? Okay, and then the other one will be like, is it effective for non-native speaker to rely on instinct to solve grammar problem? By instinct, I meant about non-native speaker who relies on what is it? Sounds good. So there are like, oh, it sounds good, so it must be true. So like that. So that's what I meant on instinct in this presentation. If it sounds good, is it so the non-native speaker will be like, if it sounds good, so it's probably correct. But if it doesn't sound good, it's probably wrong. Okay, that's what I meant on instinct by this presentation. Okay, we're going to the next concept, everyone. So we're going to talk about instinctual language acquisition. So basically, the concept talks about how someone or a person learns language by exposure. Okay, so there are the characteristic of learning language by instinct. It comes from natural exposure, learning from what is it, native speakers, from media, from movie, music, and etc. So basically, not formal classes. And then like the next one would be intuition based, relies on feel correct. So it relies on feel correct for usage rather than explicit rule. So it relies on, like I said earlier, it sounds good, it's probably correct, but if it doesn't sound good, it's probably wrong. So for example, we have some example here. Children picking up grammar rules by listening and mimicking adults. So copying and listening, absorbing language. Non-native speaker correcting themselves based on what sounds right. So that's what I said earlier, actually. So that's the first concept that we are going to use, or we are going to talk. Learning language by exposure and based on feel good, sounds good. Okay, so next one will be grammar proficiency for non-native speaker. So for non-native speaker, they are learn language by what is it? Observing the structure and explicit instruction and grammatical rules. And this is a few method how someone or non-native speaker, young learners actually, learn grammar. First will be observation and imitate, taking experiences, real life conversation, and media. Okay, those four methods to learn grammar. Those are four methods learn grammar without formal classes. Actually, moving on again. See the next one. Okay, so these are a few scenarios. How could a non-native speakers learn grammar or learn English without formal classes. First will be like cultural immersion. So they are watching movie, they are going to English club, they are immersing themselves in culture. And the next one will be media, movie or music, books, and exposure. English classes, it's basically the same like cultural immersion, but exposure more about listening, taking in, absorbing. Meanwhile, cultural immersion more like about watching, reading some, what is it, cultural product, music, movie, books. So it's basically three of them are correlates to each other. Okay. And this is some concepts about how non-native speaker is able to spot a grammar error. First, statistical learning theory and socio-cultural theory. So I'm going to give a bit of summary from the first slide to here. So how does everything correlate until here? So basically, a non-native speaker is able to how a non-native speaker is able to learn English. First, they are copying, absorbing, and etc. And then after that, absorbing, immersing themselves into the culture. And then how could all of those things, all of those methods is used to are using to spot grammar mistakes. So there are two concepts about that. The first would be statistical learning theory. So it talks about a speaker, non-native speaker, is able to spot mistakes simply because they have so many inputs, so many data, language data. They learn, they listen every day, they read every day, they watch every day. They're watching, what is it, movie, music, or something every day. And then their brains, like they have the data of, what is it, how a sentence could be wrong, how a sentence could be right. So basically, it says about a learner is able to spot mistake because simply they have so much data, and then the brain simply learns how to spot mistake by those data or data. Okay, I'm going to next one will be like socio-cultural theory. It is more or less same like statistical learning theory, but socio-cultural theory, it emphasizes on social interaction, and cultural context in learning. According to this theory, language learning is socially mediated process where learners acquire linguistic knowledge through communication, interaction with more proficient speakers. So it is a bit different from the first theory. This one talks about basically someone learn language by what is it, socializing, cultural immersion, books, movie. It basically has the same approach like the first theory, but this one more about what is it, learning language by culture, not by exposing what is it, so many sentences and other media. Okay, so I'm going to take us over here. I'm going to the scenarios. Sorry. Oh, okay, this one. Okay. So there's a bit, I'm going to give a bit of example about how could someone learns a language from each theory. Sorry. Okay. So over here, I'm going to give some examples. So there's someone named Ali, 12-year-old, non-native English speaker. And then like, as you can see, he learned English by some methods like collaborative learning, and then language exchange, social interaction. That's about what that's a social cultural theory said about how could someone learn English, and then spotting mistakes. So by what is it, social interaction, and then talking to each other, immersive in the culture. Okay, as you can see, and there's error detection and correction, and there's peer feedback. While working on group project, Ali classmate Sarah point out grammatical mistake in his sentence, and etc. As you can see, there are some example for that. And then the next one will be statistical learning theory. So we have someone else over here, Maria, a 10-year-old non-native speaker, attends international English, where English is the main language of instruction. So as you can see, exposure to language from this theory talk about frequency of usage, pattern in language, and error detection. And the product will be the same like the first theory, able to what is it, spot grammatical mistake. And then that's about it actually. So the two theories actually talks about the same thing, spot grammatical mistake, but by different method and different approach. The cultural one talks about spotting grammar mistake by culture, immersing themselves, and then statistical learning theory talks about how to spot grammatical mistakes simply because the frequency of usage. Okay, so how all of those theories, and then how about all of those concepts could bring or could be used in the classroom? So an ability to spot mistake based on what sounds right can be used. However, teachers still need to explain the correct structure or sequence. Learning through immersion and exposure can be helpful for students, especially to understand cultural context. But nevertheless, teachers must still provide explanation about grammar or structure, as non-native speakers may be able to imitate, but may not necessarily recognize the underlying structure or roles in sentence. So in the classroom or in a classroom, the teacher still needs to explain the structure and then the roles and etc. Because non-native speaker, they may be able to recognize the structure, but when it comes to complex sentences, compound sentences, the students still need an explanation from the teacher. And then I would like to add one more thing. So the teacher needs there will be cases where the students the student like this is not what I heard, this is not what I saw on movie, this is not what I heard on song or etc. And then the teacher still need to explain the correct structure. Maybe the student will say like, Miss or Mister, this is in a movie or in a song I heard the sentence like this, not like that. The teacher still needs to explain that the structure is like this and like that, the correct one and the correct usage. Okay, so that's about the in the classroom. Okay, for teachers, teach non-native speaker. Okay, in some instances, like I said earlier, this is actually the one that I said earlier. In some instances, there may be conflict between what students understand through immersion and exposure and what they learn at school. So immersion, exposure, movie, music, books, and etc. And what they learn at school. Still, teachers need to clarify and explain these differences without diminishing the learning experiences the students gain outside the classroom. So the teachers still need to explain the correct one, the correct structure, the usage, but the teacher needs to find a way to explain without making the students, without making students feel like, okay, I don't want to watch movie, I don't want to listen to music anymore because it don't, it doesn't correct. So the teacher needs to explain in a certain way, give the correct one, but still, encourage students to listen to media, to cultural product, books, or movie, and etc. Okay, so we're moving to the conclusion. Non-native speaker, especially young learners, may develop the ability to spot mistakes through exposure over time. Various theories support idea, all emphasizing the importance of exposure and pattern recognition. Learning through exposure and immersion can be effective for cultural context and natural language acquisition. However, so like I said, teacher may still need to explain grammar rules as young learner may be able to imitate but may lack the ability to recognize difficult pattern or structure. Combining exposure with explicit instruction might be beneficial, but further studies are necessary to fully understand the optimal approach for grammar acquisition in young learners. Okay, that concludes the presentation. And I have to admit, this topic still needs a lot of research, and I'm going to say this is a very basic one, actually. Okay, that concludes the presentation, and maybe I'm going to moderator. Is it okay to open the Q&A session or? Okay, so let's see what we have on the chat.
Hi, yeah, thank you for that. If anybody has any questions for Fazri, please put them in the Q&A box. Suki is asking for the presentation. I know I can see from the chat that you're having difficulty seeing Fazri's screen, so apologies that you were having some technical errors there. This is being recorded. So what we'd be able to do is you will receive the recording of this within the next few weeks. So if you weren't able to see Fazri's slides at the time, you can refer back to the recording because the screen is being shared, so you should be able to follow them then. So apologies about that. Does anybody else have any questions for Fazri? Okay, so Jane has asked, is there much difference between young learners and adult learners when it comes to instinctual language acquisition?
Yeah, it's actually a bit different because language acquisition is better on children because there is a window of age for young learners to absorb language. So it is a bit different. It is better on children, especially age 5 to 10. There are window in their life for young learners. They are better absorbing language. But yeah, it's basically different.
Okay, thank you. And Ashwin has asked, as a teacher in Indonesia, how do you use the theory in which you explained? Is there any classroom incidents that you remember that you can use as an example?
I could give example of classroom accident actually. Okay, so of course, like there was this student, and then she basically has been learning English by media, movie, music, books, etc. And then there was one chapter. It was about comparative adjective. So I said like old, older, and then the student said, "No, it's not supposed to be older. It's supposed to be elder." And then yeah, I'm explaining to her that there are two forms, older and elder. So for that kind of case, you need to explain the student there are two ways or which one is correct again, but without diminishing the without diminish their motivation to learn English outside of the class. And then those two theories, the statistical learning theory, that's a theory that sometimes I use in the class. For using that theory, usually I'm going to expose the student with sentences, with vocabulary. So that's it for the answer. Sorry for the lack of clarity, I guess.
Thank you. Tracy has asked, as an EAL teacher in the UK school, preparing 11 to 16-year-olds for GCSEs, how can you help to encourage them to believe that they can learn a topic directed to native English speakers?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? It's a bit lagging over here.
Sure. So Tracy wants to understand how she can help like 11 to 16-year-olds who are preparing for their like end of school exams. How can you encourage them to believe that they are able to learn a topic that is directed more towards native English speakers? Is there anything that you can sort of any way you can encourage the students and give them confidence, I guess, that they're able to grasp the topics?
Okay. I couldn't really give a clear answer for that because I'm not really familiar with GCSE. It sounds like an exam in UK, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the when you finish high school in the UK, you take your exams to finish high school.
Okay. Maybe in my opinion, so it would be like, how can you help to encourage them to believe they can learn a topic? Okay. I'm sorry, I couldn't give a clear answer for that. I'm so sorry for that.
No problem. Sophia's asked, what is your opinion on CPH? CPH?
CPH.
Can you
Okay.
elaborate on that, Sophia, please?
Yes.
While we're waiting for Sophia, I did actually I found that quite interesting. I had a couple of questions that maybe I could ask. Do you think does instinctual grammar always rely on exposure?
Most of the time it is relies on exposure, because this is something that most students don't learn from formal classes. So like I like 75%, 80%, it relies on the exposure, especially movie and music actually.
Okay, that's interesting. Oh, so Sophia says CPH is a critical period hypothesis.
Okay, it's actually in the theory of it is Chomsky, if I'm not being mistaken, actually. Yeah, I've heard. If I'm not being mistaken, it's about the window of age of a children. It was a time. It is a time where a children is very good at learning language. My opinion for that, it will be about um I would agree for the CPH, because children, especially age 5 to 8 or 5 to 9, it is the best age to learn language. So that's yeah, I'm going to agree with that CPH actually. If I'm not being mistaken, yeah, that's it. CPH is about talks about best learning window for a children to learn language, and I would agree with that actually.
Okay, great. And also when we were talking about previously about instinctual grammar, does it apply to adult learners as well, or only young learners?
It applies to adult learner. Yeah, it applies to the adult learner, but you can see the result better on the young learner rather than the adult learner, because again, young learner is better at learning language. So yeah, it is applies, but you can see the result better on young learner.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And also I'm just wondering, how does we talk about repeated exposure to correct grammatical structures? How does that help non-native speakers to identify and sort of correct their own mistakes within grammar?
Okay. Sorry. Again, could you repeat the last one? It's a bit
Sure.
lagging over here.
Sorry. So how does repeated exposure to correct grammatical structures help non-native speakers to identify, and correct their own grammar mistakes?
Okay, repeated exposure actually. Repeated exposure to correct grammatical structure help non-native speaker in several ways. The first will be pattern recognition, implicit learning, and error correction. And then the last one will be feedback integration. So there are several ways that it could help the non-native speaker. So pattern recognition, implicit learning, and feedback integration actually.
Okay, great. That's really interesting. Do we have any other questions for Fazri? I'll just give you a moment or so to submit any. Okay, we've got one coming in on the chat. Does an environment with very linguistically, sorry, if you could put your questions in the Q&A, because the chat's quite busy and I keep losing your question. Everyone's saying thank you. I think they enjoyed your presentation. Okay, does an environment with very linguistically diverse contexts affect their instincts or grammar intuition, especially Indonesia?
Sorry, the question, is it on the Q&A box or is it on the chat?
It's in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Raylan has asked, does an environment with very linguistically diverse contexts affect
okay.
their instincts? Have you got it?
I can see the question.
Okay,
so
great.
That's from RQ, right?
Yeah, from Raylan.
Okay. This one. Yeah, I think it will affect their instinct or grammar acquisition. So an environment with diverse language and very diverse linguistically diverse context. So I think it will affect their language and grammar acquisition. Okay, I think it does, but yeah, I couldn't give clear answers for that. But yeah, it does, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. Suki has asked, what's a good grammar book for teaching adults with ESOL entry levels 2 and 3?
Okay, I would say, as far as I know, there's no such thing as a good grammar book. It is different from person to person. You couldn't say like, this is the best one, this is the best one, this is the best for age to here and to here. You need to learn your grammar by your own ways, actually. So, but I would say try to explore different options. There are a lot of books. Try to see it one by one, or if you are afraid, if you are, what is it, financially conservative, you can buy the sample one. Maybe try to look through which one do you think match for you. But again, I would say that there isn't the best book, so you need to find your own book to learn grammar.
That's great, thank you. And Tracy's also asked, how are you able to spot that a student's sort of immersed in English, if they're struggling with grammar and vocabulary, could be sort of signs of SEN needs? Do you have any experience in able to spot those signs?
Okay, that's in the question and answer box, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So who can you spot if it's like? Okay, how could I spot if a student struggling with a grammar and vocabulary? Okay. Usually, so I'm going to talk about the grammar. So usually, I could spot a student that struggle with grammar. Usually, I'm going to give, so for example, we're going to talk about, let's say, a present continuous, and then the students having hard time to use, when should I use the present continuous? Usually, that's how you spot a grammatic student with grammar struggling. So they having hard time to pinpoint, when should I use this one, when should I use this one, when should I use this one. So it's like the time. So if it's happening now, which one should I use? So yeah, I'm usually using that to spot a student with grammar struggle. Okay, maybe that's the answer for that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions for Fazri? I'll just give you a minute. Okay, I think that's everything. Okay, I think that's a good place to leave it. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you, Fazri, for presentation. The session, I know some of you are asking for the slides. These sessions are recorded and you will be sent out the recording in the next few weeks. So you will be able to have access to all of the slides again that Fazri shared with us. Thank you all for your engagement. Thank you.